Hello, Tubby and Coos fans. It is me, Candace, your BFF now on our live streams, coming at you for our Choose Your Own Adventure writing workshop, which I'm really, really excited about. This is going to be really fun. Hopefully, a bunch of people join for this because I think it's going to be awesome. And so I am here today with Katherine Factor, who is a writer, editor, and an educator. She's mentored young writers for decades, which I think is really cool. And she graduated from the Iowa Writers Workshop. She is also the recipient of an Iowa Arts Council grant, and she had residencies at the Vermont Studio Center and Squaw Valley Community of Writers. Her manuscript, A Sybil Society, was a semifinalist in the Cleveland State University First Book Prize in 2017. Her poems and audio work can be found in a bunch of different places, mainly on SoundCloud, if you want to look her up there, and textsound.org. She also is one of the Choose Your Own Adventure writers, and she has some great books. She's written 2 children's books as well. So I'm really excited for Katherine to do this workshop. So hello, Katherine. It's so good to have you here.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Happy Jazz Fest. I hope everyone's staying healthy and reading a lot.
So I will kind of go into the background and let Katherine do her workshop. So take it away, Katherine.
All right. So you're going to be seeing on the screen a little presentation that will help you think about brainstorming and beginning to write your own choose your adventure type of story. And so we call these stories interactive because, as you may or may not know, they are essentially like a book, but it's also a game. And so you, as the reader, is making decisions as you go along through different plot lines. And I start off by showing you all like my 2 books that I wrote. So the first one is Choose Your Own Adventure Matahari. And these were a part of a new spy series. So there's actually a handful of them with using real spies from history as the figure. And so here's Matahari, and here is Harry Houdini. It's coming out Friday, May 1st, and you can order him at Tubby & Coos. Okay, so these books, like you basically end up making a series of choices that lead you through different storylines, and you get to multiple endings. So can everyone see the PowerPoint? There we are. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide. Hopefully you all have like a piece of paper, or maybe one of your parents can take notes for you or do so as we go along. So the most important thing about writing an interactive story is that you address the reader. You bring the reader in to play the game or read the story, and that is called point of view. So in order to address the reader as the you, as the main character, we employ as writers what is called second person. So in this case, it will be you, the reader, is making the choices. And so it kind of runs like this, like you would go to the circus or you would go to the store, and from there something would happen, right? Whereas a lot of times when we read stories, they're in what we call first person. So it's like, I went to the store, I went to join the circus. And that just sort of can feel personal, but maybe not as directly involving the you, like the story is being addressed to. And we want to keep that feeling that the reader, whoever reads this or whoever you read it to, is like has to be involved in the story. And then of course there's always third person, and that is when the narrator is saying he, she, they, like she went to join the circus or they went to join the circus, depending on how people use the pronoun. Okay, and then so that's sort of like a technical aspect of writing, but like the sort of more spiritual aspect of writing one of these is that there has to be for the main character a type of mission or a call to action or something that is like driving the opening and driving the story. So we'll have like basically a choice that we are led to within the first few pages. So that character, whoever you create as the you, is going to, let's say you are joining the circus, but why? Like, what is the main reason? It's just that you have a passion for the circus arts, that you want to run away from home. So you kind of have to start to think about the you and like also like why they're there, or what is maybe a problem that is going to occur. Like, you are already in the circus and the tightrope catches on fire just as you're about to do, or like maybe when you're on it. So, you know, there's some sort of like problem or crisis or mission that you're going to be dealing with right away. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide. So you can start to like just warm up your creative juices and then think a little bit more about who is the you. So like, who is this main character that's going to be that you're going to be making like the choices for, or kind of like stand in their shoes. So it could be a famous person. You'll see like my 2 book covers and then real pictures of Mata Hari and Harry Houdini on the slide. So you could pick someone from that you already admire, someone you want to know more about, a character from history that really existed, or you can just make up the you, like you are a deep sea diver, you are a skilled doctor, and maybe these characters like end up on crazy adventures, or they're called into, you know, duty or perform a service. Perhaps you are a kid just from New Orleans, or where I'm from in Portland, or a place maybe that you've always wanted to go or you've always wanted to know more about. You could be a kid from like a country in ancient times, or another place in the world, or maybe even like someone from the future. That would be really fun. And then another example would be like a detective or a private eye, like a character that might already have its mission like involved in the career role that they hold. Like you might pick someone that is in a certain career or job, or maybe is like a performer, like my 2 characters, and then start to think about what sort of like occurrences or events might happen to that person or that person might encounter. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide so we can talk about setting. Where is the you? So we want to think about place and time and how that might affect the mission, the call to action, the character, and what sort of events or characters might come out of that setting. So we're thinking about, like in a movie, we'd probably call it like the scene where the scene is taking place. In fiction, you're creating settings, place. Like you really want to give the reader like a sense of that place by using details. So like the objects and the sort of the atmosphere, maybe the smells and the sights and the sounds of what would be taking place there. So some examples might be like that your character, the you, is at a school, or maybe is at school when it restarts, or school that they I don't know, maybe got kicked out of, or something exciting that could be happening there. Or perhaps it's like an island, or the you ended up being like a castaway on an island. Or maybe you are actually in outer space, or perhaps you decide that your character could be Sally Ride, like the first women to go to space, and that could take place like in the capsule or in the rocket or in outer space, or maybe eventually on a planet, or maybe it would just be someone from outer space that comes here. That would be fun. And then perhaps if you're just a kid, or the you is like a person, maybe they're traveling somewhere really interesting, like Chichen Itza, Mexico, or Paris, France, or New York City, or I think like New Orleans would be an amazing place to start writing and choose your own adventure. And maybe in the comments, if you're thinking of starting to think about it, or if you decide, let us know actually if you decide to pick New Orleans, so we can help you brainstorm about that amazing place and the sights and smells and sounds of the setting. So we want to think about place, and we want to think about the details that go into that place. And a big factor in determining that, like what technology would be there or what buildings would be there, what kinds of characters, is that you have to also like decide on a time period or an era, like some general like time period, like the Great Depression, and that will help you like know what possible things could happen in the book. Or maybe you pick something like the future, and so you can imagine like any types of new technology. Or maybe you decide it's like New York City and the very beginning of it, and all of the immigrants like coming through Ellis Island, or something that could be really fascinating or fun to learn more about. So take a minute to like just jot down some of your ideas. Feel free to send them to us in the comments, and then just keep thinking about like what these places have to offer. And then you can start to even think about what kind of characters or friends you would have, like your main character, what kinds of maybe guides or helpful people they would encounter, or even characters that aren't helpful, that are nefarious, or something that could be interruptive to your adventure or make you have to create decisions or that you weren't really expecting. So whatever you do, like have fun with it and use your imagination, and also do your best to stick to the reality of those places and what they have to offer. And that is like essentially, those are essentially like the structure of it, and that you need to have the character in place. But what's really going to drive the book along and the choices is action. And so now we'll go to basically the last slide, which is about action and how to create choices that have a lot of meaning in them. And those require kind of a good setup with you and the setting, but also that call to action, that mission is gonna, like, the importance of why we're writing it and why the characters involved in the situation they are. And one way to do that, to make it really clear, is that a lot of action right away. For instance, being in the circus, performing on the tightrope, and suddenly there's a fire in the circus tent. So that's something that's really intense, is going to create a lot of action. And then you have to decide, do you like swing off the tightrope, or do you fall, because that's safer or something. And so you want to create choices, especially the first one, that have a lot of impact and a lot of meaning. So we'll just read over these examples and then we can brainstorm together, think about what, might be fun to write about. Okay, so one example would be if you picked like school as the setting, or the you as like a student or yourself. Let's say you're walking to school, or when there was school, and you see a bank robbery. Okay, so just as the thieves are stashing the cash in a getaway car, one of them turns and looks directly at you. Do you go to the cops even though they saw your face? So the thieves might actually like track you down because you would be like a witness, or should you keep silent and just hope sort of like for the best? So that's a lot of action, because then you either like go to school, or you go to the police station, or maybe you decide to tell your best friend, or maybe you decide to even like follow them and try to get some of the money. So see how that setting like leads to action. And then you think a lot about like what is around there that could happen, or like what is, what would happen if you go to the police, or would you be more scared? And like what might, maybe you end up trying to teach her at school. It's just hard to forget. So you can like move in any direction from there. And then another example would be like that you're the private eye detective and you've just closed a tough case. And you're, as a private eye, you're used to strange happenings. But when your phone rings and the call routes from a strange glass building that is rumored to be haunted, you fear you've met your match. So you're probably being asked to like show up at a haunted like building, and you're pretty confident because you're a detective, but you are going to be alone because you are private and you have to move in secrecy. So you're going to have to decide, like, you try to help the person that's inside, or will you make it out alive? Like, because you don't really know what the stakes are. So if there's a risk, there's probably going to be a lot of action. So with that, you could decide to go to the building, maybe up the phone call and hope for like a better case that might seem safer. So the purpose really is that like you don't want to just have a first decision or any choices that are kind of like, do you go down the hall to the right or do you go down the hall to the left? But trying to make those like decisions full of action that are going to have a lot of meaning. So like that, it'll be easier to keep writing the different stories from that. So that's what it brings us to. We can go to the next slide, just so that you know that brainstorming is a really important part of any creative process. And then it's really fine to mull over like who you might want and like what setting you might want, and then what the predicament is, like what the problem is or the mission. And it's just really fun to come up with a lot of different ideas and then see what sticks. See what like you're really connected to. Maybe pick an era that you really want to research. Maybe it's something like ancient Egypt that you've always wanted to know more about, but haven't really had that chance in school. And so this way you can like creatively explore decisions and also like what might happen in those environments. So it's really important just to like keep the flow going and brainstorm and then make notes. And I can even like, show you a little bit about the outlining that I did once I had my ideas going, because it can be kind of hard to keep track of. But basically, you just have to enjoy your adventure and use your imagination. I think now we'll take questions and see if you have anything you want to know more about writing a Choose Your Own Adventure. And also, we would love to hear ideas that you might have for starting one of these.
Yeah, we definitely would. I just want to say real quick that I've always thought it would be awesome to write a Choose Your Own Adventure that takes place in New Orleans that is like a supernatural kind of adventure, because I think that would be awesome. We have so many graveyards and, history here that I think it definitely would make a really great setting for a Choose Your Own Adventure story. There's so much that could happen here.
Yeah, we can sort of explore what that might, since you're there and since it is such a rich place.
Sure.
If anyone has ideas they want to share, we can sort of talk one out too. It might be helpful.
Cool. We have a couple of questions. Great. So Alyssa says, are the choices always 2 options, or could you offer the reader 3 options?
Hi, Alyssa, and maybe your family also. The choices can be more than 2 options. And actually, I did that for the first time in my second book because it can be a little harder to keep track of. So I'll just show you the page, because there are other Choose Your Own Adventures that have, I've seen some that have like, 6 choices, but here's one, with 4. And this is like from a scene in the book where Houdini decides to go back to Coney Island to see his friends at the freak show, who all have different spy skills to share. So these are the options. If you decide to study sword swallowing with the sword swallowers, we can learn to like regurgitate regurgitate keys, or you can visit the dangerous chasm to learn how to dematerialize, which was like actually what they would try to show, that you could like disappear. Or do you want to find the dog-faced boy, which was a real person that had like very hairy face and was like known, so I wanted him to be in the book? Or do you want to find the tattooed cat woman who knows inks and codes? So what if you do more than two, then you want them all to kind of either meet back up or have a way to get to an ending. So that's the trick, just to keep track of it.
Cool. I just for fun, I would definitely pick the tattooed cat woman because she sounds awesome. I don't know if she would be a good choice or not, but she sounds cool, and I'd probably go see her.
I mean, I have to say, as a cat and person, that I just I will just say no spoilers, but that is a good choice to make.
Awesome. Lynn asks, is it better to write through the end of the story and then go back and make decision branches, or write results of each choice as you go?
Hi, Lynn. That's a great question. I think so. I did both. Sometimes I would like know the ending and I didn't necessarily know the middle. So I would like have to kind of make one of the branches in the beginning connect to one of the endings. So like for Houdini, I mean, I did in his case, like his ending, he didn't die doing one of his tricks, which just seems like ridiculous because he did all sorts of death-defying like stunts. I mean, he put himself in trunks in icy rivers and like got out of them, and he buried himself alive. He did things that other people have tried to do since and have died doing. But his real death was from like essentially infection from like getting punched in the gut after a show in Montreal. And really, it was probably his stubbornness that didn't help his situation because he insisted on performing. So I knew that was going to be one of the endings, that you would get punched in the gut and insist on performing and basically die of a gut stomach infection. But I didn't know, like when I was in the beginning and kind of towards the middle, which one of those was going to end up at that ending. And then eventually they all started making sense and sort of like telling me what storyline they were connected to. I don't know if that's helpful, but outlines are really helpful. And I can show you, I call them like butterfly outlines because they kind of have to go this way.
Oh yeah, like the butterfly effect, where it's like, oh, if this choice happens, here's all the stuff, and then they kind of spread out. Is that why you call it that, or did I just make that up?
No, I think that's what it is. If that makes sense. I was just talking about the shape. I'll just pull my like scrapbook here from making Matahari. Well, actually, yeah, I can show you two things. Feel free to keep typing in questions, but this is the bet. Like, I mean, I can show you guys like this page was a list after I had written a lot of it, and so I had to keep track also of like the page numbers that I had used and what they were connected to, and sort of how they were connected to each other. And then I think I have an outline in here. So you can see one half of the outline. So this is where, let's say the choice is over here and one side goes that way of the butterfly wing, and then the other butterfly wing goes this way. So then it was kind of hard to do it as letters, but then this would be the next pages to the next choice, or if you made the choice the other way, and then it kept branching out. But I like the idea a lot of that has a butterfly effect because everything is still connected. And even though you guys can do anything you want, make up in so many ways anything you want, like alien invasion or whatever, like there's a lot of stuff that really does have to make sense and historically be accurate at the same time. You can't go like too far. You can go far out there, but you've got to keep the reader grounded in setting and in some aspects of true reality, or it'd just be too much.
There's another question from Lynn who wants to know, how do you organize a choose your own adventure book? Like choosing which page, like it says, you know, go to this page. Like how do you do that?
Yeah, so I showed you that list where I had to like go and cross off page numbers, or maybe you would draw lines from a set of page numbers to another set so you can like tick them off. But I'll show you like what a draft of Houdini looked like after I worked on it chronologically. I'm not always, I kept it organized, like basically, let's say page 1 through 115. And that would be, just as a regular manuscript with my notes. But you can see I would then fold the pages that I knew that they were connected to pages like further back. So maybe when you get to one that's unfolded, I still needed to make sure that it connected to another page number. And it's a constant process of creating and then like doing visual mapping or something more tactile to keep yourself like organized. And then a lot of times I would just write the one story I was the most interested in, like the Coney Island thread with all, like, I just read a lot about what were called freak shows back then, and whether or not they were exploitive, like trying to also make some moral decisions about what to include, and how there was work for disabled people at a time that those people were like literally kept in closets because they had deformities or malfunctions, and there was a real it was exploitive, like a circus is, but it demonstrated, people from all over the world sometimes 100 years ago when there was no way to have that kind of like contact with people that were different. So sometimes it was incredibly racist in terms of like the names that people were called and the shows they had to put on. At one point, Houdini was asked or had to be like the wild man from Borneo in these, chains of like the jungle, and they made it very, racist about an indigenous cult, like a savage, beast, that was like the main, not the main attraction, but one of the attractions. And Houdini was really hardworking, his whole life, extremely hardworking. And he was an immigrant, and he was actually from a Jewish family. So there was a lot that he had to overcome. And, he did whatever it took to become famous, including possibly becoming a spy. And so the theory about him spying is connected to his career taking off at about 1899. And the theorists say that's the same time that he was offered to become a spy, or asked or required to be a spy by the beginning of what is the Secret Service in the United States. And he wanted to be a true American, a helpful American. And so, possibly that's part of what motivated him if he did spy. So that book really gets to explore the idea of him as a spy, or you as a spy. So you can learn about what spying was like 100 years ago, some of like what the technology was. And a lot of time, just to follow up on that question, what helped me organize was like the actual research and the actual events in his life. So I was able to like put those together in a way that kind of progressed and sometimes was silly and sometimes highlighted some incredibly triumphant moments of his and what America was like in the Gilded Age and what vaudeville was like and counterfeiting, fun stuff like that.
That his life sounds so interesting. It's like I don't know a lot about Harry Houdini, but it just sounds like he had just such an interesting life.
One thing about, I didn't know all this stuff either. I mean, I had been fascinated as a kid, you know, I mean, but like, I didn't know, I mean, he held like huge grudges. He would just burn the ground of like other magicians that were trying, like doing his tricks. And one of the ways he did that was like by publishing. He actually was like he had big literary dreams and would often hire ghostwriters and writers and like wrote columns for magic magazines. And he was a huge collector of magic and had, you know, stuffed his New York City home with just like everything there was to in print or posters. I mean, also himself and his performances, but he would hold these grudges and just kind of go after people too.
Yeah, that's fun. It makes for a fun story, right?
Yeah.
Alyssa is asking, I'm sorry, she's asking, do you keep the you in the story gender neutral? I guess when like other people are addressing them.
Yeah, so well, for these for the spy series that are done with real historical figures that were clearly at that, you know, they're all like in the series 100 to 200 years old, have characters that were like, I wouldn't want to assume, but they were, you know, either male or female identifying. But all the other choose your own adventures, you know, they do, try. The idea is to keep the you as gender neutral as possible, because what is gender anyway, but also because that way any reader could step into the shoes of that character. So it kind of just depends too on like whoever's writing it and how they feel like where the you is potentially. And it might be really fun to explore a time period like colonial America when women didn't have the right to vote or something, but maybe the you, you know, does something that's really radical to help women, and then, you know, or something that wouldn't normally be possible at that time. But yeah, I think the more neutral the you is in a lot of ways, the more can happen.
Yeah, I would think so also. In the choose your own adventures that I've read, you know, the you is there so that you can put the reader can put themselves into the story. You're the one going on this adventure and making these choices. So I would think that the more gender neutral it is, the more readers it could appeal to as well.
Yeah, and then that has been interesting, I think, for the illustrators to try to like in these cases of the spy books, the illustrators were able to draw like the actual historical character in them. But a lot of the books, you might notice that you don't necessarily see a drawn picture of the character because that is the reader making the choices, but you might see the drawings of the buildings that would be there or other characters that were on your path. And so that's something to think about too, if any of you are visual artists or enjoy maybe doing that on your iPad, and like you could think about writing and also drawing at the same time, or having someone else in your family do the illustrations later.
That would be really cool. Do choose your own adventure graphic novels exist?
That's a really good question.
I don't know, and that would be awesome.
Yeah. So, like, what would, if that exists? I mean, then it might be called like pick your own. Like you could call it something that had the interactive feel, but like maybe riffed off the idea of like the graphic novel, like pick your own frame or something, or like how do you see that happening? Like having a few like frames on the page and then you have the choice.
Yeah, I would think, or maybe like a few pages of like the, you know, like, okay, here's what's going on. So you might get a couple of pages of action or, plot. And then you would have a choice that says at the bottom, just like, I guess, a regular choose your own adventure book, where at the bottom of the page, it's like, go to this page is this page of this. But it's just in graphic novel format instead of novel format. I'm sure there has to be something like that. Yeah, I think wouldn't that be cool? I think the visuals of that could be cool, because you're not showing the main character in the frame. You have to show what they're seeing. And I think that would be a cool thing to do.
So like in my books, I have to use a lot of dialogue to make that action. Like, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be in here, or you need to go on a mission. Like I have to use a lot of dialogue. And like I could see in graphic novel, you're using some dialogue in the bubbles, but also a lot more of the visual, like tension or the look on someone's face being menacing or something that would like drive that action and drive your decision. I think that would be really rad.
I think so too. So does anyone else have any additional questions? If not, I think, or while we're maybe waiting, it would be cool for Katherine to show us some of the stuff that you use for research, because a lot of that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still thrilled to answer any questions, or if anyone has ideas for their beginnings they want to put up there. But the thing with Houdini and Mata Hari lived during the Belle Epoch, which was like right basically before World War I, kind of like destroyed Europe, and it was very indulgent. There was a lot of costuming, there was a lot of partying, and a lot of, aristocrats in Paris, like having these sort of like, collecting antiquities, and then, it was just a pretty wild time and wonderful visually. So I was able to like look at a lot of that part of history. And also I went to Mata's hometown in the northern Netherlands, and there was a museum exhibit there in Leeuwarden where she lived, and also like didn't really want to live because she had gotten so used to Paris and fancy living. But there's like no video of her, there was a lot at the time that is lost to time. And she was wildly popular, and with Houdini, he was wildly popular, but also like extremely good at promoting himself and was such a huge entertainer. There are so many posters. So there's a lot of really cool ones online, but I'll show you some that I got prints of, because they sort of show, what he was doing at the time. This is more towards the 20s and towards the end of his life, but his show started consisting of his tricks, which he was his body was actually growing pretty tired from, extremely grueling. And then he'd do like a second act where he would do a fake seance and show everyone how fraud was being committed by spiritual mediums. And so these were like, this is from a real poster. So like Houdini would show you in the second act, like if there was tapping on a table at a seance, and he would show like how that mechanism was created by the medium to like fake tap from under the table. So this is a poster from that time period. And actually I was reading again today about this show, Houdini in New Orleans. And one year in 1916, he got to New Orleans and he put in the paper. I mean, the newspapers were extremely helpful at advertising for him. And he put in and also the fact that he was always challenging cops. So that created a lot of upset and a lot of press, and he knew how to work the press. And he got to New Orleans and he put in the paper, like, what do people want me to do? And everyone sort of suggested that he ended up hanging upside down in a straitjacket on Canal Street and escaped within 3 minutes. Here's Houdini. Also, by the 20s, he had his own film production company, and he actually starred in films that were silent movies then. And this one, The Grimm Game, interestingly enough, is about the character. There he is, Haldane, And he is like essentially a spy for the Secret Service. There was even a movie where he like flew a plane. This is probably a version. Yeah, this is the milk can escape. Or version of that, maybe the tube escape. And this is the milk can. It just looks like glass on the poster, but it would be like a metal can where people used to store milk in it. And it seemed like he didn't have any room to breathe or anything. And then this whole part would be in padlocks. And actually there's like a little part of air up here that he could breathe in, but somehow he got himself uncuffed and also out of the milk can. That's the milk can escape. And of course, let's see. Here's one just sort of more original, his original act of just escaping handcuffs. He was the master of cuffs and the prison breaker, because he could get out of like basically any prison or any type of handcuffs, and he'd go all over the world challenging like Scotland Yard and the cuffs that they had. And then I think it's fun to show some of these books that I got at Powell's a year ago. And this is something from, I don't know, the 60s. And a lot of these were our magicians trying to figure out over time how he did what he did. And here's one, this one's called The Man Who Walked Through Walls. Like, he really did have a trick that he walked through walls. He only did it in New York once, but he mostly did that one in Germany. Here's Houdini on magic. This is like writings about him writing about the tricks so he could like bust up other magicians. This is a book by Ruth Brandon. And I just love the cover. There aren't very many women writing about Houdini and magic. So if anyone knows of others, let me know. This is The Life and Many Deaths of Houdini, which of course was really helpful in writing a book with a lot of endings that unfortunately in Choose Your Own Adventure, sometimes you die, like in a game, your character's killed off and you have to start over. So I thought it was pretty fitting.
Yeah, those are really cool. So I think it doesn't look like anyone had any more questions. I hope that you all enjoyed this and got some good information. I think it was cool. I got good information. I kind of now want to go and write the Choose Your Own Adventure New Orleans supernatural story, because I think it would be really fun to do.
I would come visit for that when, you know, when it's got like, it'd just be fun. That'd actually be a fun thing to do in real time with people, like a New Orleans scavenger hunt or something.
Yeah, I totally agree that it would be a super fun, real Choose Your Own Adventure to do, and make decisions and stuff in real time and have different things happen. And yeah, it would be really fun. But anyway, thank you, Katherine, for doing this workshop. I'm going to let people know, if you want to find out more about Katherine, she does have a website. It's just katherinefactor.com. And do you have any other places folks can find you if they want more info, or any social media?
Yeah, there's social media. That's just also my name. Probably there's a Facebook page, K Factor Writes. And I hope to be like actually updating it. And it's been so fun to share and connect with booksellers. And I hope, that people just more explore the world of books and independent bookstores and keep supporting writers and booksellers.
I hope so too. And Katherine's Houdini book comes out on May 1st. So if you want to order it, you can email us to pre-order it now. And it's just Spies Harry Houdini is the name of it. I think it's going to be really cool. I had no idea that Houdini did all that. So I'm really interested to read it and learn more about Houdini's life, because it sounds pretty wild.
Yeah. There's actually a great blog, Wild About Houdini. And the blogger and Houdini expert John Cox has been running it for years. And there's so much on there that's just like, it's just mind blowing.
Yes. So it's info@tubbyandcoos.com if you want to pre-order Katherine's book. Again, you can find her at katherinefactor.com and on all the social media. If you look up her name, I'm sure she's pretty easy to find. And of course, if you want to order any books ever that you see on our live stream, you can order them on our bookshop site and through email. So thank you again, Katherine, for being here. It's been awesome, and thanks for doing this workshop for us.
Thank you. I love New Orleans so much. So thanks for making me a part of Jazz Fest and your bookstore.
Great. Well, you have a good evening, and thanks to everyone for watching and for all of your questions. And we will see you next time. Bye.